Hello there, my beautiful people. It is time for another video in our video notes section. Today's video is going to focus on the ACT, and this video is going to be pretty quick because I know you guys are taking the ACT soon. So let's go ahead and jump into what you need to hear. Now, before we get into it, let me give this disclaimer. Please excuse the band in the background. I know they're going to have their moments where they're a little loud, so I'm going to try and make sure that I speak over them. So we're going to talk about the basics of the test first. The first thing that you need to know is the test as a whole is 215 questions, and you'll have about 3 hours to complete that whole test. There are two sections pertaining to this class, two sections that I, your English teacher, am concerned with, which are the reading section and the English section. So in the English section, you have about 75 questions, and they're going to give you 45 minutes to answer those questions. Most of those questions are going to be, can you revise or can you edit a short piece of text from different genres? In the reading section, you're going to have 4 texts consisting of 4 text types, which are your prose fiction, your social science, your humanities, and your natural science. You're going to have 40 questions from those 4 different texts, and you're going to have about 35 minutes to answer that text. So they want to know, can you comprehend what you read? They want to know, can you cite evidence, and can you integrate that information from different sources? Now, the writing portion of the test is completely and totally up to you if you take it. If you do, great. If you don't, great. Either way it goes, it does not affect your composite score. Remember, the test is about how many you can answer correctly. So if you guess, it's not going to hurt you. So if you get to a question that you don't know, take a good guess and keep it moving. So let's focus in on the English test. What is it that we are looking for to get a good score on the English test? So the first thing that you need to remember is on the English test, shorter is better. This is not the place to use that beautiful, flowery, descriptive language. Hurry up and get to the point, okay? The next thing that you need to know is the difference between independent and dependent clauses. Now, I know this is something that you have not heard in a long time, so I'm going to go over it in the next part to remind you of what independent and dependent clauses are. There are 4 ways that they're going to talk about combining those independent clauses. And so I'm going to kind of remind you of what those are. The English test is going to talk about those run-on sentences a lot. Please make sure that you can tell when a sentence is a run-on and how to fix that run-on. And then the other thing that you need to make sure that you do is make sure that your subjects and your verbs agree, because that is important. All right, so let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. When we're talking about those independent clauses, again, that is going to be the clause or the sentence that can stand alone as a sentence. You can definitely see what the subject and what the predicate is of that sentence. So the example that I'm going to give you today is, he made sure to create something fun for each student. We know the subject of the sentence is he. We know the predicate of this sentence is to create something. So we know who it is about and we know what they did. It is a complete thought all on its own. A dependent clause, however, cannot stand on its own. It's going to give us the subject of the sentence, or it's going to give us the predicate of the sentence, but it's not going to give us both. So it needs another piece, another clause to make it a complete sentence. So in my example, although extremely tired, Dr. Hunter planned events for the school the next day. So in this example, although extremely tired is a dependent clause because it needs the rest of that sentence in order to tell who we're talking about and what he did. So that is how we need to make sure that we can identify those independent clauses and those dependent clauses. We need to be able to combine those different independent clauses by using semicolons. those semicolons are going to be very important. And a lot of times, those semicolons, as far as the ACT is concerned, not in regular English, but as far as the ACT is concerned, your semicolons and your periods, one and the same. They're going to kind of work the same way. So in the example, the pancakes, that should have been were exceptional. The pancakes were exceptional. It was so sweet and pretty. Actually, yes. So that should, the way that sentence works, the pancakes were exceptional is an independent thought by itself, and it was so sweet and pretty, independent thought by itself, but we want to put these two together. So remember, when we are using a semicolon to put these independent thoughts together, make sure the thoughts are, one, closely related, and two, they can feed off of each other. Okay. Another way that we can combine those sentences that you're going to see all over your ACT is going to be using commas and a conjunction. Now, conjunction, junction, we talked about that in class. And so if you need some more help, you can either go to our Canvas and click on the playlist for Schoolhouse Rock videos, or you can go to YouTube and just type in Schoolhouse Rock conjunction junction. And you're going to see a nice old-timey video, and it's going to remind you of what a conjunction is. And so usually when we ask what is a conjunction, our kids love to tell us, I remember that, fanboys. Yes, but do you remember what fanboys stands for? You have to know what fanboys are and how they operate in the sentence. So a conjunction is going to connect those two independent clauses. So, but when you do that, you must have the comma and then the conjunction. So don't forget that, okay? And then the last thing that you want to make sure that you pay attention to with the ACT in the English part is redundancy. Anything that is already said, we don't have to say it again. So I gave you two examples here, and I said it was 6 a.m. in the morning. Well, if you said it's 6 a.m., we already know it's in the morning. We don't need both phrases. So that sentence should say it was 6 a.m., or that sentence can say it was 6 in the morning, but we don't need both. Same thing with the next sentence. When did you become so smart and intelligent? Smart and intelligent mean the same thing, so we don't need both words in the same sentence, okay? So now let's talk about the reading test. The reading test seems to be the test that throws students off. So the first thing you need to know is to read the whole text. I know you guys have heard that tip all the time that says, read the questions first and then read the text. Do not do that. Read the text first. Read the text first. Read the whole text. Do not skim through it and pick out random parts to read. Read the whole text. Now, there are going to be trap answer choices. So everybody knows that one of your answer choices is going to be right. But the rest of those answer choices, this is how you can eliminate what makes them wrong. So you're going to have an answer choice somewhere that is what we like to call distortion. And that basically means that you're going to look at it's going to include a detail from the text, but it's going to change that detail somehow so that it's no longer a real or a true detail. Okay? You're going to have a misused detail. It is in the text. It is where, it makes sense. It is true, but it doesn't answer the question. It's just random text that they threw in there to throw you off. You're going to have some answer choices that are out of the scope of the text. So in other words, the text may be talking about one thing, and this answer choice might be true, might make sense, but nowhere in the text does it talk about that. It's not mentioned. It's just thrown in there to throw you off. You're going to have some answer choices that are extremes. That means these are going to be the answer choices that use words like always or never. They're the extremes. The best or the worst. Always extremes. For your answer choices, the answer choice is not going to ask you the always, the nevers. You're going to get pretty much, like I said in the beginning, to the point. And then the last one that you're going to have are going to be your opposites. These are going to take what is in the text and make it the exact opposite of what is in the text. So that's going to throw you off as well. So if you start to see especially if you are narrowing it down and you get to those last two answer choices and you're like, I'm not sure which one, look to see if they use one of these different strategies to throw you off. Just like they have trap ways to answer your choice, give you answer choices, they have very basic ways that they ask the questions. So on the reading portion of the test, you're going to have one of 5 different question types. The first one is going to be a whole text. That means this is going to be a question that is geared towards the whole text. It is a very general question about the text as a whole. The other type of question that they may ask you is going to be an inference or point of view question. Be careful, because point of view can mean one of 2 things. It could mean the viewpoint from which the author is speaking from, or it could be the viewpoint from which the story is told from. So make sure you pay attention to both of those. Detailed questions. These are going to be the questions that are specific to certain details or specific to certain paragraphs of the text. They're usually going to be the ones that have what are called reference numbers. So if you see in line 32, that's going to be a detailed question. So go to line 32. You don't have to look at everything else. You don't have to reread the whole passage. The other type of question you're going to have is a vocabulary in context. That means when we see this word, how is this word being used in the text? What does it mean in this text? Not what you think it means on a regular everyday basis, because that may not be how that word is used in the text. So focus on that. And then the last question type is going to be functions of a part. So when we say functions of a part, we want to know, why was this paragraph in the text? What function does this paragraph serve? What function does this title or this heading or this picture or this sentence, these words, what function do they use? Okay. Now, here are the 4 different genres that you are going to come across when you are taking the test. The first one is going to be your prose or your literary fiction. These are going to be your short stories. These are going to be your excerpts from novels, excerpts from plays, your poems. That's what this is going to be. The focus of these questions for this genre are going to be about drawing inferences. Can you interpret the tone of that text? Can you determine the theme in that text? And do you know the difference between the implicit versus explicit meaning? Now, I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you, so let's slow that down a little bit. Remember, an inference is what you already know versus what the text told you. So what is it that you can kind of put together based on what you read? When we're talking about themes, remember, themes are going to be a theme is going to be what is the lesson or the moral in this text that I can apply to any text. It is universal. It is a lesson that we can learn at all ages that I can get from this text. And remember, implicit versus explicit meaning. Implicit means it is implied. They don't come out and say it. They kind of hint around it. You can kind of guess about it, whatever it is that they're saying. And then explicit, they were very direct with it. The meaning is right there in your face. Okay? The next type of text that you might come across is going to be a natural science. Natural science, these are going to be your science-based questions about biology, physics, chemistry, all of those. And the focus of those is not going to be, can you do biology? Can you do physics? They know you can't. That's not what they're looking at. What they're looking at is, can you cite evidence and can you find the main idea of that text? That's pretty much what your natural science section is going to be about. Your social science, these are going to be your business articles, your economic articles, history articles, political science. That's what poli-sci is. Poli-sci or political science articles, those sort of things. They want to know, again, they don't want to know if you paid attention in your economics class. They don't want to know if you paid attention in your history class. They want to know, can you read this text and find the main idea? Can you give us the author's viewpoint? How does the author view whatever the subject is? Okay. And then the last one that you're going to need is your humanities. Your humanities stories are going to be your text about art, about media, and about philosophy, that sort of thing. And in there, again, not trying to see, do you know art? Because they're not expecting you to be an art curator or a media specialist. They want to know, can you read this passage about art and tell the tone of the passage? Can you read this passage and give the viewpoint of the text? Whose viewpoint is this text being written from? What does the author view? How does the author view this particular subject? So that is what the reading portion of this test is going to be about. I know that was a lot of information. I hope that it was a lot of helpful information. So remember, I know you're taking, for some of you, you're going to be taking the test tomorrow. Good luck. Some things that I want you to remember. Remember that you got this. You are going to do an amazing job, and I believe in you, and I cannot wait to hear about your success with this test. You all have a wonderful, wonderful night. See you later.